All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. First of all, I want to welcome you to our Business Information Security Officer panel. This is the first of three business information security panel type conversations we'll be having within Cyversity. And so my name is Brenda Bjerke. I work at Target. I lead the cyber risk area and also the BISO teams, which are part of that group. And the Target Cybersecurity org, just to kind of give you a big picture, it also consists of award-winning teams within cyber defense, cyber solutions, and we always have open roles. And so please be sure to reach out if you are interested or if we can tell you anything about these opportunities that we have at Target. Target's been a sponsor with Cyversity, working with Cyversity for several years now, and we're very pleased with that partnership. And we've also just started a Twin Cities chapter. It's just over a year old. It's one of our newer groups, and they're getting ready for hosting their very first in-person event since the pandemic, and that will be October 4th. So if you are around the Twin Cities, that would definitely be something to check out. So we're in for a really big treat today. I'm really pleased to let you know that we have some very successful BISO professionals here from Target. I'm really looking forward to the conversation because people are always asking me about BISO, who are also interested in learning more about the role, not only for themselves, but just about learning in general around cybersecurity and the different roles. BISO is one of those really unique roles that's like just a perfect stop along your career journey within cybersecurity, certainly, but even technology. And so you can develop skills to become a deep subject matter expert, or you can develop skills to become a CISO or anything in between. So it's kind of just create your own journey and you can help to shape that up. BISO has really unique views into the business, into technology, and into cyber threats. And all day long, they have to flex with their communication styles. So maybe you're speaking to an engineer at a very detailed level, and then you're talking to a very senior executive all on the same day on the same topic. So it's just a great opportunity for folks to experience. So today, I'm really happy we're going to hear insights on BISO. We're going to hear about why would you become a BISO? I just kind of gave you some answers, but there's more details. How to be a high-performing BISO, how to overcome kind of common challenges within BISO organizations, and then some of the tactics that you might want to take to kind of leverage BISO as a development plan along your own career journey. So let's get started, and we're going to ask each of our BISOs here to introduce themselves. I'm going to ask each of you to please share a little bit of background about how you became to be a BISO, and also one fun fact about Target. And Daniel, I'm going to ask you to start.
Awesome. Thanks, Brenda. Appreciate it. I am in BISO, I guess just to start off, stands for Business Information Security Office. And the reason it's named that is it's kind of the intersection between the business teams and information security teams. And so I've been a BISO here at Target for coming up on 3 years now. Started off in the stores and supply chain and financial retail services portfolios, also working with marketing and merchandising areas as well. How I got started into joining BISO, my previous background was in consulting, primarily for financial institutions, as well as some IT auditing and security testing background. So certainly that's a valuable resource to have in the BISO role. Part of BISO's engagement is working with business teams on some of their security testing requirements, auditing requirements, and results from testing. And so that was kind of a natural fit and helped me kind of get started in the role and hit the ground running from the get-go, from day one. Fun fact about Target, I really enjoy the amount of resources and kind of the friendly atmosphere and really supportive nature of the teams here. Whenever I've been looking for resources, for support, asking questions, everyone's been super helpful. I don't think I can even recall off the top of my head of one single time where I came out of an interaction going like, that didn't really help, or that person, didn't seem like they wanted to help. So I really appreciate the values that we have here at Target and the teamwork aspect.
That's terrific. Thanks. Jen, how about you?
Sure. So I'm Jennifer Merced. I'm a principal cybersecurity analyst for BISO. I have started my career. I have 20 plus years of experience. I really started my career in IT, supporting and in the engineering space, supporting corporate systems, our Canada systems, as well as our POS systems. And through that journey of really doing the engineering work, really started to develop a strong passion towards cybersecurity. It's so important to everything that we deliver upon and what we do in the engineering space. So when the BISO role actually, the opportunity presented itself, I jumped right on it, and have been now in the BISO role for 5 years. And it's been an amazing journey. Just the value that the BISO can bring in that intersection that we talked about between our engineering and IT business communities, as well as the cybersecurity space, has just been so amazing up to this point. One fun fact, I would actually agree with what Dan is saying. I think you stole the words right out of my mouth, actually. The BISO community, what I absolutely love about it is we all have unique skill sets. I come from an engineering background. Some people come from cybersecurity backgrounds, and we just really lift each other up and support each other. And I think that's really built a really strong BISO organization within Target. So.
Yeah, that's a really great example of working together at Target. Lucas, how about you?
Yeah, so I've been in IT somewhere, probably around the 20-year range. I started in the military, worked at a TV station, just had a variety of little IT jobs, but always really loved IT. And what attracted me to Target was just the overall complexity, between warehouses and stores and international offices and all that kind of stuff. And it was like so cool to see such a huge infrastructure to work with. I started similar to Jennifer, really doing the hands-on infrastructure IT work, and I started to gravitate more and more towards users and who was using my tools and what were they doing, and kind of that feedback. And then that kind of grew into like, oh, I'd like to understand more about how the business is really using this technology at Target, or how it's affecting them. And so that really attracted me to the BISO role. It's like, I want to see the inside. I want to understand, how distribution centers work and all that kind of stuff. So getting closer to the business and understanding that was a big deal for me. So that really has been a really fun part of my BISO journey. Fun fact about Target. My favorite color is red, and Target loves to put red into all of our owned developed apps, red sky, big red this, red that. And I just love hearing red all the time on everything. So we love to brand our stuff, and it's really cool to see that.
Well, that is perfectly true. So thank you, Lucas. So what I'd like to kind of get into right away is why go down the path of a BISO as part of my career. So Jen, I'm going to go ahead and start with you to just ask, what is most rewarding as a BISO?
Sure. Yeah. What I really like about being a BISO is every day is really different. It keeps you on your toes, and it's a very exciting role. Your daily interaction it can be very different from how you kicked it off, Brenda. We could be sitting in meetings with VPs, either on the business side or on the cybersecurity side, talking about security postures, talking about risk of some of these, identifying risk of some of these critical systems that we're supporting. Or we could be in the weeds with the engineers, looking and partnering with them to make sure that we're really implementing really good security patterns and controls as they're, and building systems early, or embedding security early on into the development lifecycle. And I think from that, what is super rewarding is when we see the delivery of a product, whether it be something that we're building out internally for our own team members, or something that we're delivering for our guests, that we are actually part of that delivery. And that's very rewarding. So knowing that we were part of something that was delivered into a production environment, either for our guests or for our team members, and we were part of securing that system, is very, very rewarding.
Yeah, I always think of BISO as not operational, but it's very strategic no matter what you're kind of working on. And you work pretty autonomously. Like you have to kind of decide where is the best place to spend your time and focus on that priority. So great. Dan, what's the ideal path for an entryway? You kind of talked about your background, but what is that ideal, or is there a different ideal?
Sure. No, I don't know that there's necessarily an ideal background. Certainly, I think it was easier for me coming in from a more technical or security focused background, but certainly, it really depends on what teams you're working with, right? If you're working with certain engineering teams in a certain field, obviously we have a payment team, for example, and if you had payment experience, that experience might be more valuable for you working with that team compared to someone else in another space. So I don't know that there's necessarily any ideal entryway. I think the more knowledge you have, the better. BISO, as you mentioned, both Jen and Brenda, you're working across a variety of different teams and platforms and products. And so the more breadth of knowledge that you have in each of those areas really will contribute to your benefit in the space, as well as how you can benefit your team. So I don't know that there's necessarily any ideal. Certainly the more security knowledge and the more business knowledge you have for your specific business areas is helpful. But I think it's good to have a blend, and you can't have too much of one or too much of the other. You certainly need to have both the security chops as well as the business knowledge and acumen and communication skills to bridge the gap between the business teams and the security side of things. So I think all of those things are valuable.
It's so unique around BISO compared to other jobs within cybersecurity. So it's just that business facing, but you also do have to know all that security space at a broad level, but there's certain like depths you kind of go into depending on who you're supporting in terms of your portfolios. So that is very unique with BISO. Lucas, you had talked about your career history, and can you just talk about, why do some cybersecurity professionals become a BISO? You talked a little bit about why you became a BISO, but why would it be a good stop for others to consider along their own career journey? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think one of the big things is in security, we kind of got insulated into, we're security. This is how you this is how you secure things. And we know the right things to do. We know how to make it all work. But then we sometimes lose focus of the business and what this effect has on our users, but also the companies that we work for. Most of us aren't going to work for an actual security company. We're going to work for a company that does something else, or the government, or like that, where getting closer to the business, understanding what their day-to-day is like and what your security decisions start to make that impact really helps you shape those future decisions to say, I can't just lock this down like crazy because there's a group of people that have to use this way. And it's a totally legitimate reason they have to do it because it drives the business. So really getting that business understanding is huge dealing with users. And it goes, both ways too, with learning that, but then also, when you're looking at focused on actual security, security people and such, it's like, okay, so how do I talk to them about, we can't do it this way. Let's find a better way to do these things. So I think just having that real world context is really important in security.
So I'm going to take that a little further with you. So, as you had this history and moving into BISO, did you run into any surprises as you became a BISO and started to have that exposure around what you kind of expected starting out as a BISO compared to now that you've had the benefit of experience? Were there any kind of like surprises that weren't obvious to you?
Yeah, they were. Honestly, at Target in the last 10 years, we've really focused hard on making security easier for folks and just showing them and really putting it out there. Say, this is security. We have instructions. We have wiki pages. And I was surprised at how that message still doesn't resonate as far into the business as I would have expected. And, for good reason. Someone only does something, once every 3-4 years, they're not going to know how to do that. So that lack of knowledge of the business to know those things was a bit surprising to me. But then I go, yeah, that's not their day to day. If they asked me to do the same thing in their specific domain, I wouldn't know how to do their thing. So why should they have to do ours? And that helps to really learn how to make sure this stuff works for all users when you're doing that, when you create a security solution.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so unique. I'm glad that you called out that business view because that really is something to highlight. Jen, can you talk about, some of the resources that you've leveraged? You've been a BISO for some time now. So what are some of the resources that you leverage to understand BISO best practices? We talked to a lot of companies that also have BISO organizations, and everyone kind of runs them a little bit different. But how do you kind of look through all the different resources and different benchmarking to kind of figure out how to implement best practices in your own application of being a BISO?
Sure. Yeah, there are definitely a couple different avenues there. It is getting out there in the industry and building out those connections. I know in some of my engagements, what I found is that BISO can vary from organization to organization, even from sector to sector. So financial community might be doing something different than a retail community. So I think it's very interesting to build those connections. And it also gives you the opportunity to talk through what is working well. How have they adjusted along their BISO journey? What doesn't work well, and kind of share and collaborate and try to problem solve together. So through that external experience, there has been a lot of learnings, and we really can kind of work together as a community and lift each other up just to continue to evolve what BISO shapes up to look like. There's also, there are tons of articles out there right now. The BISO, if you go out there and you take a look at BISO, there are so many different resources out there in terms of, again, what are some of those challenges? What have you overcome? What are some of those skill sets that are really important to be an effective BISO? And so I think, learning some of that, bringing some of that back into your own BISO to talk through, how can we continue to evolve and mature in this space, taking out what some people are learning externally in other businesses, what people are writing out there in terms of articles and things like that, and bringing that back in and really driving those best practices internally is really a way that I have found is really good from a resource perspective.
So once you've applied those best practices that you've identified, how do you know that your BISO program is effective? I mean, that's one of the things that we are always trying to figure out. We don't have a widget to show we did this thing. So as a BISO, how do you know you're doing a good job?
Right. Yeah, that part can be very challenging. I think, there's a couple of different ways you can gauge whether or not the BISO is being effective. One of the ways is there's less surprises. So if your BISO is really sitting at the table with your business and your IT partners and really understanding like where some of those high risk areas are and able to be part of that and influence security, and also being able to bring that back to the cybersecurity space to be able to talk through maybe some of the changes they're making, or just to see if there's anything we need to do to adjust the way that we're doing things. I think that is a really good indicator that BISO's sitting at the table and being very effective. The other thing I would say though is, as our roles, we're in cybersecurity, or at least our BISO is in cybersecurity, but we are very heavily engaged in the business. So we have really deep relationships with the business. And if we're building that trust with the business and they're bringing us along and they're including us really early on in anything that they're doing, any kind of product designs, or even just reaching out, asking questions, and you're more of an extension of the team or even embedded in the team than being a person that's sitting in the cybersecurity space, then I think that's a super good indicator that BISO is adding a lot of value.
Yeah, you're invited to have a seat at the table.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a
Dan.
fantastic point there, Jen. Just to tack on to Jen's point there. In addition to kind of that close partnership with the business, we do see a lot of kind of cross-pollination as far as collaboration with BISO and the business. So for example, we have a lot of BISO analysts that previously were working on a business or an engineering team directly with the BISO and hopped over to BISO to start partnering, with some of the teams in their areas, and vice versa. We've had BISO analysts that have gone on to work on roles, with some of the engineering teams or business teams they've partnered with. So I think that collaboration and additional development down the road is also a potential benefit for both target and the team members and the teams they're working with.
Yeah, that's a good point. The kind of the career journey and actually having that be executed and show up. When you think about having your being invited to a seat at the table or being able to kind of move on to other roles and bringing the knowledge that you've learned as a BISO, what do you think are some of the most important skills that I'd want to focus on developing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the most important skills, certainly having the people skills, the partnerships, the relationships, when you're working with your different partners, whether they be in security, whether they be in the business side of things, the engineering teams, having those skills, communication is certainly important. Making sure you're speaking to your audience, as Lucas alluded to earlier, right? You might have a certain situation, but when you're speaking to an engineering team, you're going to give them what they need to address the problem. Whereas if you're speaking to leadership, they might be interested more in the risk perspective rather than the hands-on nitty-gritty engineering details, right? So it's important to be able to tailor your message to your audience and make sure you're speaking to them on the path they can understand. And then certainly security knowledge, of course, is a big benefit and an important skill as you're working through some of your situations or challenges in your day-to-day role, making sure you're aware of best practices, of risk assessment, risk mitigation strategies, and again, being able to communicate that to all the stakeholders involved.
And
Yeah, I think that communication. Oh, go ahead, Jen.
Oh, I was going to say, I'd like to add on to a couple other skills too, is really the ability to come in and influence a secure culture. Being able to have, when you're sitting at the table and really getting to the heart of why we may need to do something from a security perspective, and being able to have that ability to influence that is really super important. And then I would also say like patience and listening skills, because you're going to have some strong opinions sometimes in these discussions, and it's really important to sit and listen and really take in, like, what are the challenges, what are the concerns, to be able to get at the end result, because everybody at the end of the day, really, we need to come to common ground. We have a goal, but really, like, being able to sit and listen, get that bigger picture, get all the facts, and then that will help you kind of navigate those situations to get towards an answer in the end.
It's a fantastic point, Jen, and that is a great point for when we're looking at security controls versus business objectives, right? A lot of times those are sometimes in opposition, or they seem to be in opposition, compared to usability for a particular product or program, right? So it's important to I see a question about how BISO teams are engaging in the business, right? And so we have a ton of different touch points, whether that be from leadership on the business side, leadership on the security side. We're working with the product owners, product managers. We're working with the engineering teams directly. So we have, influence, as you mentioned, in all of those different areas. And it's important to be able to, like you said, influence a secure culture and find that happy medium, find that balance between usability and security, and help everyone come to the same point.
A lot of it is understanding your audience is kind of what I'm hearing from both of you, because there's not like a step 1, 2, 3 in order to have influence, in order to be invited to have a seat at the table, in order to understand technical acumen at the level that you need to for the person you're speaking with. And so understanding your audience is really sounds key in terms of a BISO role. So thank you for sharing that. That's really great. Lucas, let me ask you, how do you typically spend a day? What do you do all day?
A lot of coffee. No, I kind of split my day between consulting. So there's a lot of that. A lot of that's like the helping of the business via Slack, emails that come in, or different meetings that I have on my calendar. So that's security consulting and helping. Sometimes I have to do some research to look up, like, what does this mean that they're talking about, or is this a security domain I don't know, or reaching out to my peers to ask questions. And then the other side is really strategizing on how to address the overall business security and how to kind of keep driving that forward, how to drive that security strategy into their day-to-day, and just really make an improvement on the security landscape. So I kind of go back and forth between those two is my main day-to-day stuff.
How do you try to figure out, like, when you're going back and forth, how do you navigate between IT, cyber, the business, and then also to get buy-in with all those 3 big stakeholder groups?
Yeah, it's interesting. That comes down to definitely the communication skills and knowing your audience. I really try to, some of the audiences I already know, they're people that I've met before and worked with for years. Other times it's an audience I don't know, and really coming in and, like to Jennifer's point, come in and listen, really listen to what they have to say. And if they're frustrated, understand why they're frustrated. If they're happy, great. If they're totally against what you want to do, understand it first before you start talking about it. So I really try to level set that so that I'm coming to each of them from those directions. And then to get buy-in, I really look at that mutual benefit. There's kind of an old security style of saying, well, it's for the good of, like, for our company, right? For the good of Target, we need to do this because it's security. That doesn't resonate with everybody. But looking at, hey, if you organize this, and if you check this off and you remove people out of this list, then the next time you have to send this email, you're sending it to less people, and you know who to talk to. It's like, oh yeah, that makes sense to organize it. From a security standpoint, it's good to have less people having access, but from their standpoint, it's also easier overhead management. So trying to get those kind of nuggets of mutual beneficial things, I think, is really important to drive a case. And you'll find the business will absolutely follow something that, if it makes sense for security and makes sense for them, they will do that 100 times over.
Dan, when you are thinking about, you are a person and you support big portfolio groups, how do you decide like where my highest risk area is and where should I spend my time? And how do you think about that? And how do you engage in time management?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of it comes down to, obviously we have limited resources, every one of us do in our day-to-day jobs, and we have to find the highest risk or highest criticality items to work on. So overall, certainly in my portfolios, I have certain higher risk areas. As just an example, payment, for example, would be fairly high risk area. Guest data would be high risk area because of the potential security challenges and security risks involved in those areas. So doing a risk assessment of the business portfolios or business teams I'm working with, there may be certain initiatives that have higher business priority or higher security priority that are going on currently. So being aware of those initiatives in your area, making sure you're plugged in and in touch with the business teams, the product teams, the engineering teams in those spaces, as well as leadership on both the business and security side of things, help me kind of stay on top of my areas, my business portfolios, and of course cross portfolios as well. I'm working on other projects besides just strictly in my business portfolios, but having an idea across the board of what potentially might be the highest risk and highest priority areas to work on at any point in time.
Yeah, especially with the threat focus and understanding like where is the cyber leadership really focused? Like what are the top 3 areas that they're most concerned about based on current threats that are actually happening out there? So I think that's a really good point.
Certainly, and there's certainly a balance between proactive and reactive situations, right? So certainly on the BISO side of things, since we're consultants, we're trying to push the proactive engagement as much as possible. So we want to be engaged in design processes early on, making sure we're designing security and embedding security from the ground up. And ideally, we're trying to avoid as many reactive situations as possible when an incident pops up. But of course, that's security, right? Sometimes there's 0 days, sometimes there's vulnerabilities that pop out of nowhere, and we have to be able to be engaged on those reactive situations as well. So that's kind of how we look to balance those as well.
Yeah, I would also like to add in that, because we have the ability to be so entwined with the business, we can talk to those leaders and we can ask them, what are you thinking to do to maybe improve your business capabilities that you're putting out there in the next quarter or the next few quarters, so that you can sit down and really, based on some of those critical assets, you can understand what they're planning to do, and then kind of position yourself, in the right spots to be able to make sure that you're influencing security, building in security from the beginning of the life cycle and all of that kind of stuff. So I think having those engagements with those leaders and really understanding where they want to go with their products is really important as well.
Yeah, and I like to pepper in like small things that keep things going. Like if somebody just needs a quick answer, I'll take 10-15 minutes to knock that out and get them so they keep going. And you got to remember too, the people that are really engaged with you, you want to keep stoking that engagement. If you've got somebody who responds to you quickly all the time, gives you really good information, those are definitely people you want to just keep going. Even if it, even maybe it's a little, cut some time out of your lunch, or you have to stay a little late just to get something out there. But I'm like, do you really want to create those relationships? Because those are the folks that are going to have the really good stuff, and they're really going to help you go along. And they really appreciate that, when they can keep their job going and keep moving quickly, and that you recognize it. So sometimes you got to take time out to just get some of the little guys down, the little stuff done, just to keep stuff going.
Well, and also I have really noticed as a BISO organization, you really focus on meeting your customer, engineer, leader, meeting them where they are. maybe I don't like email, but I like to have meetings, or, whatever. Can you talk about some of the different paths that you've used, Lucas, in order to kind of meet these customers where they are, especially just to get something kind of small completed for them?
Yeah, and I think that's really at the heart of it, Brenda, is where, how do they like to communicate? I usually, for the most time, unless it's something immediate, I like to start with email, just because email is something that you can look at when you're ready, and then you can reply when you're ready. It's not me, kind of flashing something up on your screen or poking at you saying, hey, I need this answer, I need this answer. So, but then I'll have people that they don't respond well to email because they're tired of reading it, and then they'll let me know, because that a lot of times those people respond back to you like in Slack, and you're like, oh, okay, so this is a Slack person. So when I want to talk to them, that's the means that I use. But I just try to really go with respecting everyone's time. I don't put meetings on calendars unless it's something that we really need to meet about and do that, because some people really don't like meetings and it takes time away from their day to work on it. They'd rather just Slack you. Some people are just not comfortable in different environments too. So you should really have to do that. And you have to think about that too. Also, when you're looking at working internationally, some folks aren't comfortable online. Some people have internet issues, internet connections, and even that's even here in the US. I've worked with people that live out in the country, or they're doing a meeting from their cabin. So doing a Zoom meeting is actually kind of hard, but Slack is easy because, a glitch in Slack doesn't really translate. So yeah, meeting them where they are and understanding their preferences, and just kind of keeping kind of mental notes of that for different people. It goes a long way to really being able to get your stuff done, and, getting them to have buy-in later on.
Jen, you've been in the BISO org, I think the longest out of all of us here. And so you've seen a lot of BISOs kind of ramp up and move on to other things, or maybe they stay. But what do you think some themes are around the things that have been most challenging about being a BISO? Are there any themes or any things that people might want to know about in order to prepare, maybe prevent? Let's talk about challenges.
Sure, yeah. I think one of the biggest challenges that I've probably overcome is just those strong opinions. Not everybody is in favor of some of the security that we want to put in place. There's also these technical challenges. We have security, but then we have new technology that's coming into the space, and making sure that we're applying the right security strategies towards these technologies is also really important. So there can also be some conversations that need to happen where we might need to pivot and look at something different, and just really tackle these problems a little bit differently. So I think it's being flexible, but also, making sure again that we're securing these systems the right way, that we're having those conversations, we're doing the right thing for the company. But keeping an open mind, as to what is it that we need to do, what's the right thing to be applying. There's been technical challenges from, security tooling. Is this the right tooling to, shift left with Agile? How far do you shift left versus having something in the environment? So, there's a lot of different considerations to make sure that we're securing something. And I think it makes it super interesting, and it makes it really fun, and it makes it so that we're problem solving, but we also are coming up with, in some cases, new ways of working, which is really fun and exciting as well.
Lucas or Dan, any other challenges that you might want to call out for people?
I think for me, it was kind of learning the business acronyms and the lexicon that they use, because you're diving into something that these folks have been doing for years. Some people 20, 30 years, and like a bill of lading. What is that? I had no idea what that was. So my first few meetings were a lot of like, write it down, look it up later, and do the research. So now you're tasked with, as a security professional, we're all tasked with knowing security technologies and the breadth of that. But now that you're in the business, you're also tasked with learning the business acumen and all of those things that need to be done. And that's another set of things that you have to research that you probably never thought you're going to have to worry about. For me, that's one of the challenges that's ongoing, but it's also exciting.
Oh, I agree, Lucas. It's certainly one of the challenges, but also one of the most rewarding things. And personally, I enjoy learning new things, right? So it's fun for me to go out and research some of the terms or acronyms that different teams might be using. Additional challenges, and we kind of spoke to them earlier in regards to prioritization, right? We only have so many BISOs for hundreds of business teams, right? So how do we prioritize, or how do we find the highest criticality items to work on? And then who do we serve with so many stakeholders and business partners and teams depending on us? Like you said, Lucas, sometimes you have to take those 10 or 15 minutes to help out, the person that needs something real quick, even though you're engaged on, 2 or 3 other projects and you want to get them all done. And so that goes back to kind of your balance around meetings and Slack and email. Personally, I like to get things done as soon as possible. And so sometimes I like to jump on Slack or set up a meeting real quick, but obviously you have to balance that with communication styles and whatever's going to be best suited towards the team that you're working with. So certainly all of those things are challenges, but also rewarding parts of the role as well.
So Dan, I want to take that a little further with your comments around learning. So we know at Target, being a lifelong learner is kind of just a requirement to do a really good job in a changing environment. And if you're a successful business, you're going to be in a changing environment. Also, our tech area has gone through really big changes in terms of modern tech and even how they get work done. So when we talk about learning and a learning culture at Target, how do you take advantage and apply that learning culture to yourself?
Certainly. Yeah. So here at Target, we have something called 50 days of learning, basically one day every week, where we're able to devote some time towards learning and training, certification courses, things like that build our own education, whether that be in the security area, whether that be in the business, whether that be, for IT in general. And so I see a couple of questions here about certifications and things like that. So I have taken several certifications while I've been here at Target. Target's offered me the opportunity, and we have several boot camps as well. So Target will bring in external training partners to help walk through and teach some of the certification training. And then after the training course is over, you get to take the exam and earn that certification. So as part of that boot camp here at Target, when I first started 2-3 years ago, they had the CISSP, Certified Information System Security Professional. And so I think that's a very good certification, especially for someone in the BISO role, because it really helps you think about things from a CISO or Chief Information Security Officer perspective. Whenever you're looking at any business and security type decision, making sure that you're incorporating all of those decisions and factors into play when making those decisions. In regards to kind of internal resources as well, over some of the technology that's changing within cyber specifically, we have teams like cyber threat intelligence that go out and do research for us on upcoming trends and things that they're seeing threat actors performing out in the wild. So we're always up to date on the latest threats and threat attacks that threat actors are taking out in the wild. And we're able to do our own research as well and follow up on some of those things when we see a tidbit that pops up in our business area or portfolios. And so having that 50 days of learning time set aside to be able to do that research on our own and build our own knowledge to support both ourselves and Target is awesome.
Yeah, and to add to the technical, I mean, the amount of, the amount of people that we have, the amount of talent that we have, especially in security, is so great that you can go, hey, I don't understand this. Could I set up some time and talk to you about it? And how does this work? And you basically have an expert there. I mean, there's people here that have written books, that are on panels, that organize these kinds of things. And just having access to that kind of person without having to go to a webinar or find a conference or whatever is huge. And I consider that a great benefit here at Target. Probably any organization that's a really big, talent pool, but we definitely have focused that on tech here.
I would like to toss away in that, sometimes these teams, the product teams, are learning the technology also. So they're bringing something completely new. And if you have the opportunity to sit with them and learn with them, that's a really good way to, kind of just problem solve together and lift each other up. The other thing is don't be afraid to ask questions. I don't think there's ever a stupid question. And in fact, asking those questions can foster more conversation and drive some really valuable and meaningful discussions. So don't be afraid to ask questions along the way if there's something you don't understand. The other thing too is, like, if there's something really technical that I want to understand and I just need to learn it really quickly, you can YouTube. And if you YouTube different sources, you can learn something in 10 to 15 minutes if it's something that you're interested in. Or there's a lot of training forums where you can actually take a deeper dive if you really want to. So there's lots of opportunities to learn new technologies out there.
So Jen, you're a principal, and so you've had, a good, strong career journey here, career path, and you talked about kind of learning and being kind of like learning on the fly a little bit, but you've also have had a purposeful journey in terms of planning and focusing with conversations with your leader about what you want to learn, what you want to focus on, skill development. Can you talk a little bit about how you approach that and how maybe others might want to think about it in order to apply and engage their leader?
Sure. Yeah, I think, there's a couple different things. The first thing really is what is the domain that I really kind of want to be a subject matter expert in? As I work as a BISO, I really like the cloud and compute space, and I really like the network engineering space, and being able to work with my leader to talk through, I'd really like to be able to not only just have some expertise in that domain, but also have the breadth, because, understanding all the different pieces that happen within cloud and compute are very important. I also think it's really important to not only just understand the business side of things, like, how is network, oh, sorry, I froze for a second there. Let me unfreeze. But really kind of just understanding the business side of things, but also the cyber defense and the cyber solutions and some of the things that also weigh into that. So understanding like how my business is implementing something, how does that actually, adjust or change or frame up how we're doing security on this side of the house? So I think so having the ability to go and talk and have those relationships with cyber defense, learn some of what they're doing and how they're protecting our systems, and then also really understanding our portfolios and our businesses are really important, and having that conversation with your leader to get you to what are the certain trainings or actually personal relationships that you need to be able to do to build that is really important.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. So I'm going to ask now about what's unique about BISO at Target. And the reason I'm asking is because we've talked a lot about benchmarking and learning, lots of external touch points, but then also internally working with different partners. And at Target, we are unique. We have our own brands that are awesome. We have really great experiences for our guests, and the expect more, pay less promise. And so there's a lot of uniqueness at Target that, the general public is quite familiar with. But how about BISO at Target? Like, what would you call, I'm going to ask each of you, what would you call out as something unique about BISO at Target? And I'll start with you, Jen.
I think I'm going to kind of go back to, BISO is what you make it. Each of us is coming in with different unique skill sets. And I think, you can take your career where you want to. You have the ability to have those conversations with your leader. You have the ability to build up the competencies where you want to. And I think that I like that career journey that you can create for yourself. Kind of like what you talked about originally is if you wanted to be a CISO, this is actually a perfect career journey for that. So yeah, that's what I guess I would say.
Okay, thanks. How about you, Lucas?
I kind of go back to the exposure to talent in every aspect, right? We have cybersecurity teams that are, some of the best, in the world, and then people that are serve on boards and stuff. We have people in our supply chain that can tell you about the history of, these controllers and conveyor belts technologies. And every time I work with a team, you find that one person on that team that is this real bona fide expert, and they're still here. They've been here with Target, 10, 15, 20 years because they enjoy the culture and they enjoy what they get day to day. And by keeping those people, you just get so much exposure to, wow, I didn't know about that. Or, they could tell you about the history of Active Directory and crazy stuff like that. And it's like, because we have that talent retention, I never thought that I would run into this many experts in whatever field they are at a company. Obviously we're a large company, but there are bigger, and I'm like, they could go other places, but they stay here for the culture. So that exposure has been really unique for me at BISO.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Lucas. How about you, Dan?
Yeah, I'd actually probably combine both Lucas and Jen's answers. So not only do we have that wide breadth of team knowledge and expertise available, kind of at the drop of a hat, you can reach out to anyone and get answers or background on any technology or security or business related question. But the mobility between teams and collaboration between teams to be able to reach out and say, hey, I have a question specific to, here's stores, and the position of Target as one of the largest retailers, specifically within tech. So if you worked at Google, for example, you might not have the supply chain or stores insights that you would here at Target. So having those collaborations with tech, security, and some of the unique engagements that we have here at Target, I think are valuable. I do see, I guess, to speak to specific engagements, I know there's a few questions about there about kind of getting more specific with some of the engagements, and just a couple of examples. These aren't real examples, but they're similar to real situations we might run into as BISOs. So anytime there's a new team or a team that's going to be engaging with either a vendor, guest data, maybe they have a new product and an app, mobile app they're coming out with, a new API interface for target.com, we'll be engaged as BISOs ahead of time, ideally, so that we can assess the situation, engage all the appropriate teams from the security angles as well as the business angles, make sure we're covering all of our bases from a risk perspective, and then implement the appropriate controls to mitigate that risk and make sure when that product or app or API or partnership with a vendor does deploy, that we've checked all the boxes and covered all our bases from a security perspective. So those might be some specific examples, and hopefully that helps.
Perfect, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and begin our close, and I do want to just thank Daniel, Jennifer, and Lucas so much for taking time just to share kind of a different level of depth about BISO that we haven't typically seen in other panels and things like that. And so really appreciate the insights, because a lot of people really are so interested in the BISO career journey and kind of like that stop and what do I need to do and what do I need to learn and how can I be great at it and all that kind of stuff. So I really love how you highlighted the variety of important work. So you're focusing on the highest risk areas. This isn't like check the box type work. This is important work. It's really engaging. You are helping to build experiences for others in the business to learn about security, others in security to learn about the business, and for yourself, you're building up your career journey and experiences. And I do love that also that you emphasize the very real and important aspect of understanding your audience and good communication and prioritization. All those things are very important, and you have so many different stakeholders. You have so many different risks, technologies, threats, business stakeholders. So many different aspects to kind of like figure out how do I focus my day. And so I really appreciate that insight. I also want to thank Cyversity for having us here so that we can speak and join others within the Cyversity community. And I also want to thank the Twin Cities chapter, and we definitely are looking forward to the Twin Cities chapter event in October. And also, I want to call out at the start, I mentioned that we're going to have a 3-part BISO series. This was number 1 in our series. Number 2, we're going to be talking with some other companies, not just Target, but other companies in BISO. And we've touched a little bit how they can be pretty different. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that in October. So you can watch for that. It'll be a virtual session. But then in November, Cyversity's conference is happening in Florida. It's in person, and we will be there talking about BISO as well. And so I really would love to see everybody there. It'll be fun to finally be in person and meet our Cyversity family. And I want to acknowledge too, I see lots of kind of comments and questions in the chat. And so we'll take this and we can apply it to kind of our next upcoming BISO series. But also I want to invite you just to feel free to continue the conversation with any of us on LinkedIn. Feel free to just reach out and message us. Any of us will be happy to engage in a conversation. Also, Cyversity is going to be linking a survey and also emailing a survey. So love to hear your feedback around what's useful, what would you love to hear in the future, and so that we can kind of work and deliver on that. And finally, I just want to thank you, the audience, for taking time today. And really, I'm looking forward to our next opportunity to connect. So thank you so much, and hope this was useful.